When people think about World War II, they think about the bombs over London. They think about the beaches of Normandy. They think about Adolf Hitler and the Holocaust. But many people never thought about what role Jamaicans play in World War II here at home and abroad. I mean, of course, we hear about soldiers going over to fight in British war effort. But what they didn't talk about is here at home, how Jamaica became a wartime refuge. Ships arrive here in the Caribbean with a lot of refugees from Europe, mainly places like Spain, Georgia. People who were scared, trying to escape the war. Jamaica became their home. But let's examine our first question. The what, the when, the where, what happened, and why is it important today? But before we answer our first question, we'd like to remind the viewers at home that we don't rewrite, nor do we recreate history. We simply ask the questions to tell a cinematic documentary. So join us as we explore the roles of Jamaican in World War II, here at home and abroad. Journey. World War II officially began in 1939 after Nazi Germany invaded Poland. Britain declared war shortly afterwards. And because Jamaica was still under British colonial rule, the island automatically became part of Britain's wartime effort. But Jamaica's role was far bigger than many people realize. Thousands of Jamaicans volunteered for wartime services overseas. Some joined the British Army. Others served in the Royal Air Force, the Royal Navy, Engineering Division, Transport Unit, and wartime industries. Young people who had never left the Caribbean before suddenly found themselves traveling across oceans in World War. Some witnessed bombings in Britain. Others worked around military aircraft, supplies, and dangerous wartime operations. But while Jamaicans were serving abroad, the war was also arriving in Jamaica itself. British authorities established and expanded wartime camps all around the island. One of the most well-known was the Gibraltar camp. Refugees escaping Europe were brought there under British protection. Among them were Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi persecution. Others displaced people connected to Britain's wartime evacuation. Also, passed through Jamaica. At the same time, wartime security increased dramatically. Stories circulated about German detainees and enemy nationals being held in camps and military barracks under British supervision. For ordinary Jamaicans, the island suddenly felt connected to a dangerous global conflict happening thousands of miles away. And today, the history remains surprisingly overlooked because World War II did not simply happen in Europe. It reached Jamaica too. So, the year was 1939 when World War II began. Jamaicans here at home became part of Britain's colonial war effort. Jamaicans not only became soldiers, but they served here at home in what became the most famous camp, Gibraltar, as nurses, nurse aides, doctors. But now that we have answered question 1, it's time to examine question 2. What is the background of the conflict and its most important place? Journey. To understand Jamaica's role during World War II, you first would have to understand the world before the war began. Europe was unstable. The global economy had collapsed during the Great Depression. Political extremism was rising rapidly. In Germany, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party gained power by promising revenge. Nationalism and military strength. Soon, fascism spread across Europe. Jewish families became targets of persecution. Entire populations were displaced. Britain prepared for a massive war, and colonies across the empire, including Jamaica, became strategically important. At the same time, Jamaica itself was already facing hardship. Poverty and unemployment affected large parts of the population. Labor uprising during the late 1930s exposed growing frustrations with colonial inequality. Political figures like the late great Sir Alexander Bustamante and Sir Norman Manley were beginning to emerge as major voices for change. And then came the war, and suddenly Jamaica became connected to global migration, military operations, and imperial logistics. Ships carrying refugees across the Atlantic towards the Caribbean. British military facilities expanded across the island. Jamaicans enlisted in wartime services. And ordinary people found themselves living inside a global crisis. For some Jamaicans, the war represented duty and patriotism. For others, it represented opportunity. But for many refugees arriving in Jamaica, ultimately, the island represented survival. Just ask the Georgians. They were here. So, in summary, we saw where fascism and war started the conflict in Europe. Jewish families had to flee their homeland to avoid persecution. Locally, we saw the rise of two political powers in Sir Alexander Bustamante and Sir Norman Manley. Jamaica became a hub for migration. But now that we have examined question 2, let's now examine question 3. What escalated Jamaica's involvement journey? As World War II intensified, Jamaica's importance to Britain increased. The Caribbean became a critical for shipping routes and military logistics. British authorities strengthened wartime security across the region. Recruitment expanded. Thousands of Jamaicans volunteered to support the war effort overseas. Some repaired aircrafts in Britain, others loaded military supplies, worked in factories, transported equipment, or supported military communications. Many Jamaicans experienced snow, air raids, and wartime Europe for the very first time. But life in Jamaica also changed dramatically. Military patrols increased. Food shortages and rationing affected local communities. Camps like Gibraltar remain active under British supervision. Inside the camps, refugees waited anxiously for news from Europe. Some had lost contact with entire families. Others feared they might never return home. And while Jamaicans were helping support the war abroad, they also witnessing war arrive on their own island to refugees, military expansions, and wartime control. The conflict was no longer distant. It had become personal. As per oral history, we were taught that early native to the campsite areas around Gibraltar would often discover barracks, or what many would call small prisons. And it was rumored from runaway slaves who were occupying these territories that they were housing German prisoners who they had captured in the war right here. But as per written history, none of these details were brought in the conversation. And maybe we should have a German town right here just to honor those prisoners of war. Then, in summary, we saw where Jamaica became strategically important. Britain increased its amount of soldiers from the island. Both locally and abroad, Jamaicans were experiencing the war times effort. But now that we have answered question 3, let's delve into question 4. What are the key moments, turning points, and decisions during World War II journey? One major turning point came as Jamaicans realized how the global war truly was. The island was no longer isolated from world events. The war had physically reached Jamaica. Refugees, military camps, and wartime fear became part of daily lives. Another turning point came through overseas experience. Jamaicans serving abroad encountered entirely different societies and technologies. Some gained new skills, others became politically awakened after experiencing discrimination despite their wartime service. The contradiction became impossible to ignore. How could Black Jamaicans fight for freedom abroad while still living under colonial rule at home? Returning veterans carried these questions back with them to Jamaica, and slowly attitudes began changing. The British Empire no longer seemed untouchable. The war exposed both its power and its weakness. Meanwhile, for refugees who survived the war in Jamaica, the island became remembered as a place of safety during one of history's darkest periods. Analyzing our history, we would have seen photographs when the Europeans were leaving Jamaica, and it was a very emotional scene. How people cried when they found out they had to return. Again, in summary, we saw where Jamaica became a major hub for survival and refugees. The British appeared weaker after the war because veterans started to questioning the fact that they were fighting for freedom abroad, then why not just fight for freedom locally as well? We know that we have answered question 4. And let's examine question 5. What were the impact and consequences of World War II on the Jamaican people locally and abroad? Journey. World War II ended in 1945, but Jamaicans would never be the same again. The war connected the islands more deeply to the outside world than ever before. Veterans returned home carrying new ideas about equality, dignity, and self-determination. Political awareness increased rapidly. National identity strengthened. And within less than a decade, Jamaica would move towards independence. The war also left behind another legacy: migration and multicultural change. The arrival of refugees and wartime populations reminded Jamaicans that the global events could reshape even a small Caribbean island. And perhaps, most importantly, World War II proved that Jamaicans were not spectators in world history. They were actual participants here at home and abroad. In conclusion, when asked what role did Jamaicans play in World War II, they fought overseas, they supported global wartime effort, they assisted refugees, but now if you reach this far in the video, it would have meant that you or someone you know are interested in these types of video. Please leave a like, a share, or even a subscribe or a comment. And do tune in again for the next episode in Questions History. What?